Hello and welcome back to PsychEd. This video is going to be covering the final Dark Triad trait of psychopathy. If you haven't seen them, be sure to check out the previous videos on narcissism and Machiavellianism. So just to recap, in the past few decades, the socially aversive Dark Triad of personality has captured the attention of both researchers and the general public. Since the conception of the construct by Paul Huss and Williams in 2002, it has been studied intensively in thousands of academic publications. The Dark Triad consists of three overlapping yet individually distinctive personality traits: Machiavellianism, which is a manipulative attitude; narcissism, which can be defined as excessive self-love; and finally psychopathy, which is a lack of empathy and being emotionally cold and impulsive. Despite their diverse origins, the personalities composing this Dark Triad of traits share a number of features. To a varying degree, all entail a socially malevolent character with behavioral tendencies towards self-promotion, emotional coldness, duplicity, and aggressiveness. All of these three traits are characterized by a disregard of social norms, and this often leads to social transgressions in terms of lying, cheating, manipulating, and stealing. Individuals who are high in the dark traits are often considered to be untrustworthy and uncaring, bad romantic partners, and backstabbing work colleagues. Additionally, they don't tend to make very good parents. In short, the Dark Triad can have toxic consequences for others who are in the radar of those who do possess them. However, you can think of Dark Triads of having some positive sides too, but these positive sides are generally focused around the individual who has the trait, and they can gain something for themselves. So today's video is going to be focusing on psychopathy, and psychopathy is a common term used to describe a grouping of personality traits that include things such as impulsive behavior, lack of regard for others, a lack of a normal range of emotional responsiveness, and frequent deception or manipulation of others. So you can see that there's an overlap between psychopathy and Machiavellianism and narcissism, but they are also distinct. Psychopathy, for instance, is characterized by high impulsivity, thrill-seeking behavior, low empathy, lack of loyalty, and general tendency of irresponsibility. Research suggests that psychopaths are often attracted to power, prestige, and control. This leads the psychopaths to focus on short-term benefits, maximizing their wealth and power by making short-term decisions, and achieve short-term economic benefits even at the expense of their immediate environment. Indeed, previous studies have argued that psychopaths have no conscience and are not at all concerned with the consequences of their behaviors on their environment, suggesting that they have a serious lack of social responsibility. Individuals high in psychopathy abhor social norms and are willing to oppose the status quo. Now, this by itself is not inherently bad, and indeed, going against the status quo often is an essential part of progress, but it's their inherent lack of empathy and self-serving goals that makes it a socially undesirable action, as opposed to something with a more social beneficial goal in mind. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? In general, these words refer to people who don't care about right or wrong, or who can't sense or share other people's feelings. They have a lack of empathy. And people often use these terms to mean the same thing, and while experts agree these so-called sociopaths and psychopaths share some similar traits, there are also some important differences. For instance, doctors don't diagnose people as sociopaths or psychopaths. They use the term antisocial personality disorder. Psychiatrists and psychologists used to call it sociopathy. A person who had this diagnosis was considered to be a sociopath. But doctors don't use these labels anymore. There's some debate over whether psychopaths have a serious form of this personality disorder or a separate but related diagnosis. That is, are psychopaths sociopaths? Do they have antisocial personality disorder? Or are psychopaths just high on the psychopathy personality trait? And do they overlap, or are they separate? Research is inconclusive at this point in time. But when we talk about psychopathy, we talk about a personality trait. And when we talk about antisocial personality disorder, we talk about a classifiable mental disorder. So people with antisocial personality disorder act in ways that go against socially acceptable norms. They tend to break laws and feel little or no guilt when they do something wrong. So again, similar to psychopathy. This condition usually develops in childhood, but you can't get a diagnosis until you're 18 or older. Doctors diagnose kids who have antisocial problems with conduct disorder, and you can't be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder unless you have a previous diagnosis of conduct disorder. Perhaps some people who have higher levels of psychopathy and who didn't get a diagnosis of conduct disorder when they were younger than 18 have an undiagnosed antisocial personality disorder. It's quite possible. Psychopaths are people who demonstrate psychopathy. So we can say that psychopaths are people who demonstrate psychopathy, which is not a diagnosis but a set of traits. The criteria for these psychopathic traits include psychological symptoms and certain specific behaviors. The measures of antisocial personality disorder, on the other hand, focused mostly on behaviors that you can see. Research indicates that around 25 to 30% of people with a diagnosed antisocial personality disorder also have high psychopathic traits. But you can't know if someone has psychopathy just by testing them for the antisocial disorder. Instead, a trained clinician would commonly use something called the Hare psychopathy checklist revised. That's a list of 20 or so characteristics. Clinician will consider someone, usually a criminal, a psychopath, if they score high on the checklist. In many respects, the symptoms found in people diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder mirror the symptoms commonly associated with psychopathy. For instance, people with the disorder typically do things such as disregard the welfare of others, display superficial charm in social situations, display a lack of guilt or regret, break the law, behave irresponsibly, manipulate or lie to others, act impulsively, seek stimulation through reckless activity, and maintain an inflated sense of self-importance. Now, while the psychopathic personality trait might overlap in some of those areas, the primary difference between antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy is the interpersonal affective traits, including deceitfulness, superficial charm, manipulativeness, deficient empathy and lack of remorse, as well as the impulsive antisocial traits characterized by impulsivity, irresponsibility and weak behavioral control, as well as criminal versatility, are what really separate the psychopathic personality versus the antisocial personality disorder. And that's it for this video, as well as the overall series on the Dark Triad traits. Hope you found them interesting, and if you do, drop a comment, give a like, and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.